everyone, and welcome back to the Rise Factor. I am your host, Sarah, and today I have the amazing business owner Shelby joining me. Shelby, we're connected for quite some time. Had the absolute pleasure of getting to know you more through the Rise program, and have just really loved you stepping into your brilliance, you shining, you sharing so much about the ins and outs and I guess the reality of what goes into our roles. So I'm really excited to have a conversation with you today. So a big welcome, Shelby.
Oh, thank you. What a bright introduction. That's lovely. Thank you.
Well, it was well deserved. So for the listeners today, the conversation is because Shelby and I are both obviously in the industry, but we are also experiencing some things as renters. And we believe that there is a big opportunity right now that potentially is going missed, or perhaps you're just not noticing the care that goes into the renter side. And we put so much focus and emphasis on the landlord side. So, Shelby, I'll get you to kick it off. Let's talk about the expectations. And as industry professionals, what do you believe that good service should look like for our renters?
Treating them as normal human beings. Like,
Mm.
just because you are a tenant or a renter doesn't mean that you are a second class citizen. You deserve anything less than what the homeowner or an investor deserves. So if you're treating your landlord one specific way, the tenant deserves it the exact same respect, the same communication, the same service delivery on both sides. And I think that's like the biggest thing that the industry is missing at the moment, because it's so much emphasis on look after the client, look after the land. Like, we do have, and we do, like, we're required to have their best interest at heart. You also need to have respect for the tenant as well.
Okay, so has your real life experience matched that then?
My real life experience, and this was hard going from like my own occupier property, renting that out as an investment property, and then becoming a tenant myself.
Mm.
The journey was like eye opening. And what I thought was standard service delivery to tenants was not the experience that I had at all. Like, no one would return your phone calls. You were literally just a number. You
Mm.
were a tick box. There was no care factor in the experience or the journey at all.
What do you think disappointed you the most about your experience?
I think probably like knowing that I had like a sound application and I had to follow the agents up on a daily basis. And then the excuses I got back was, sorry, they took an early mark today. Sorry, we've got teams off sick. Sorry, we've got, we're just super snowed under. And even to the point where I was actually approved for a property, it took the agency 4 business days to get a lease agreement to me. So I'm still sitting in the same spot, like, am I actually approved? Like, what's going on? And even then, I had to chase and chase and chase to get the lease agreement. And it did make me think, like, if I'm experiencing that as a tenant, what's going on the other side? Like, is that what the landlord's experiencing as well? Like, or is it just that they don't care?
Yeah.
So it's a very eye-opening experience. And for some people, like, if this is what I'm experiencing, like knowing the industry inside and out, what happens to tenants that don't have my experience? What happens to the tenants that are elderly, in their 70s trying to rent a property? What happens to those that have disabilities? What happens to all those tenants that are just, everyday civilians that don't have property experience and they don't know how to handle real estate agents? They're
Mhm.
going to, like, it shocks me. Like, it hurts my heart knowing that they're not going to be able to advocate for themselves.
Yeah, for sure. Do you expect your experience was going to be different because they knew what you do?
I didn't expect any like special treatment or anything like that, but I did kind of feel like they would try to like fluff it up in a sense, like try and not make themselves have mediocre service.
Mm.
And like in my experience, um, the first house I rented, the backyard actually was subleased out from underneath me and I had no idea. So
Wow.
I got to the property and the whole backyard was like fenced off and locked up and I had no idea. And then I had the property owner coming to the house every single day. So you would think in those situations, they know that I'm in the industry. So why would there not be even more care and consideration around that? Because I know the insides and outsides of the legislation. So it's like, again, for if they don't have care with someone in the industry, how's it going to be like people without that knowledge? They're just going to get walked all over.
Mm.
And it's really like, I'm really super passionate about it because it's just, it comes back to just that people first approach that should be a standard service in our industry, but it's just lacking so much.
Yeah.
And it has like a flow on effect. Like property managers already have a bad reputation as it is
Mm.
because of how people treat tenants. And it's more so the tenants like opinion and perception on property managers that gets around on the Facebook groups and communities and word of mouth. And imagine if we turned that around and tenants became like our advocates, our biggest supports out there. Like there is just as many tenants as there is landlords. Like everyone needs a house. So imagine if we changed that storyline, gave the tenants an amazing journey, an amazing experience, and then they became our advocates. They became, no, we only want to rent with that agency. So we're picking the house based on the agency, not because we actually want that house. Like imagine how much can change
Mm.
on the timeline of a tenant's journey if we started treating tenants a lot better.
Yeah. Do you think that as an industry, we just are going into a mindset like we know the process and we know the procedures, and then there's this expectation that like renters should just know? Do you think like we can fall into that trap sometimes?
I think sometimes, yeah, I do. And I mean, like, there's heaps of tenant advocate groups out there now, and there's a lot of misinformation being spread around about the legislation. And I mean, ChatGPT is good at sometimes, but also it doesn't always provide factual information. And I think that's where a lot of tenants are turning to. And um, it all comes back down to that communication, really. If
Yeah.
there's communication without hostility, then it takes away a lot of the emotion from the situation. You can just treat it for what it is.
Yeah.
It's not a whingy tenant, it's just them reporting maintenance.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, oh, I've got the fifth rental reference. Like, oh, it's just them trying to get another property. Like, just treat it as it is. And there's no complaint attached to the actual action or the task required.
Mm. So what do you think why do you think it's happening, Shelby? Like is it a capacity issue or lack of training, or do you think something different?
No, I definitely think it's like a capacity issue. And I do think it's a mindset issue. I
Mm.
think it kind of feeds down from the top where a lot of business owners and a lot of like head of departments, you when you walk into say like a toxic office and that mentality, it's the language that's used, it's the body language that's used, it all energy wises, it goes around everyone. So it's like you walk into an office one day and you've had a bad sleep and then you're just like, oh, this tenant again, or you know oh, I've got this much maintenance, oh, I've got this much work. That energy then pushes onto everyone else and that becomes the environment that you're surrounding yourself in. Whereas if you start changing it from the top down to be like, these aren't problems, these are just daily tasks, and you approach it in a different mindset, that then is going to become what the environment is. And that is how the office environment then portrays onto your consumers, our tenants, our clients, our trades. And that's how, you start changing that lingo.
For sure. So Shelby, like, because I know you quite well, like, you've done a lot of work, like, with yourself, right? And you've got a team that you're leading. So do you think also there needs to be some form of individual accountability, though, on how they show up? And going back to the mindset, is it that perhaps some of the individuals haven't been exposed to the skills that you can have to control your energy or your aura, or, guess something's happening at home, but that doesn't have an impact on your consumers being your landlords and tenants. So do you think that there can also be some self accountability or self awareness, and to be like, oh, I said that. I shouldn't have said it like that. Or this is how I'm feeling today. I shouldn't be dragging my team into this as well. Like it's not their problem.
100%. And I mean, you know how easy is it in our industry to just point the finger and the blame game?
Mm.
Like the client blamed you, you blame the trade, you blame the tenant. Like it's so easy to point fingers in this industry. But until you actually stop to be like, how could I have handled that better? Or how could I have worded that differently? That self-reflection starts, and 100% it is not being talked enough and like about enough in our industry at the moment
Mm.
about like the mental health side of it, because it's like you've still got to manage your personal life, but
Yeah.
then our industry is so emotionally heavy. We end up playing psychologist like at least once a day to a tenant or a landlord. So
Yeah.
it definitely does like build up over time, and you have to know how to regulate ground, when to take a break, when to feel within your body that today's just not a good day, and what are you going to do to be able to overcome that during the day so that you're not projecting.
Mm. Yeah,
So
I love that.
100%. And I think it all like flows in, because when you're more self-aware about how you're portraying yourself in a certain day or a certain situation, again, energy wise, how is that translating to the person you're talking to, the person you're communicating with? And then what image is that going to set for your business? What experience is that person going to have? So
Mm.
100%, it all starts within, and then what you portray out.
Yeah. So let's both share some stories, right? I'm gonna start. So I rent vest. So I was an accidental became an accidental investor. I bought my principal place of residence of 6 years ago. Then met a partner. We decided to move in together. So we rented my one out. And that experience, because I was still a BDM at the time, I used the agency that I was working for. And so I feel like it was a bit different because I was actually there and got to see the ins and outs. And then my experience then when I wasn't working from like with the agency and moved to another agency was completely different again. I again, like you said earlier, I didn't have an expectation of being treated differently. However, I did know the way, well, what I perceived as the way that things should be done. And so I did have a higher expectation from my property manager, not just as me as a landlord, but for the tenants as well. And when they should have been pushing back on the tenant too, rather than coming to me with problems, when I guess what we pay for our property managers for is to come up with solutions and how they handle that. And then we moved home. It's been 2 months now. So we moved home again, and again, another agency. And I think this is probably the most disappointed that I have been, Shelby, and what I spoke openly about. I think there's so many beautiful tech companies out there that help streamline things and automate things. And I had to download the lease agreement and the bond lodgement. I was like, when do we have to download things anymore? It should just be like a quick instant you can sign, you know? The condition report, the previous tenants where I'm currently living were here for 6 years. And I kid you not, the condition report had not been amended from 6 years ago. So I had to take hours to make sure that I was noting everything down, taking pictures. And I don't know about you, Shelby, but it's like I don't have just a couple of hours a day just hanging around for me to do these things, and cause me stress because again, I know my rights. If I don't document all of these things down, don't take photos, then what happens when I move out? Again, I know these things. So my mind went where yours was like, okay, if I'm experiencing these things and I have the knowledge and awareness, what's happening to renters that don't have that knowledge and awareness? And I think that's when you go back to what you were saying is we've got so many renters that we need to care for and be able to provide knowledge for and with so that they do become our advocates. But it's very hard for that to happen if they don't have that care factor. Now, the other thing that happened when I moved in, there was so much maintenance. And of course, it has to be in writing. And I could just sense this I don't know what's the right word to describe it, aminosity between me and the property manager, because things were just via email. And one day I was like, I had enough, Shelby. I did have enough. And so I called her, and straight away the tonality changed from her because I just approached her and I was just like, what's going on? Like, there doesn't need to be this back and forth. Let's just have a conversation. I'm doing my responsibility as a renter. Whatever the landlord decides to do or doesn't decide to do, that's on them. We'll deal with that if that happens. But I don't know why you're talking to me like this. And that's when I felt this disconnect, which is what we're talking about, right? Is aside from me being a trainer or previous BDM or a property manager or a tenant, I'm a human. And that's going back to what you said is people first approach, right? We can't just look at our tenants just as tenants. Beside all of that, they are humans that are also experiencing a massive milestone in their life, and that is changing homes. And excuse my language for anyone that's listening, but you all know me by now. It is not fucking easy to move homes, right? There's so many things that we have to think about. And so now is where I believe that there is a huge opportunity that we can lead in this space to be able to create that environment for our renters so that they are feeling supported and so that they know how to care for the home that they are moving to. So they have a good relationship with their property manager and they don't need to call them going, why the fuck are you talking to me like that? Right? Because then how do you think the property manager is going to feel on the other side of that? They probably didn't mean anything by it, but they're too busy trying to get everything done and just haven't taken a moment to just stop and go, this is a human. So that's my story, Shelby. But I'd love to hear about like, a story about yours where you felt like, wow, like we got to change.
Before I get into my story, imagine if we put a case study together of both of our stories and we presented that as real life situations to potential landlords and asked them, is this what you want for your potential tenant? Like, do you want them to feel frustrated and not enjoying living in your home? And this is what the experience genuinely is on the other side of the fence.
Mm.
And I have a feeling that if we put it to them blankly, like black and white, this is factual. Here's all the emails. Here's all, your entry condition report. Are you going to be happy for paying for that service? Because you've just had to spend hours redoing your entry condition report that they just got paid to do.
Absolutely.
So it's like if you put this to potential landlords, I always say to landlords, like if you're a local investor, why don't you go to an open home? Go to an
Mm.
open home and see how that person treats every person. See how they treat the potential tenant living in that property, bringing strangers into their house. See how they handle it. Call them, see if they call you back. And that's
Mm.
that's that's the service that your tenants are going to be getting if you select that agency. And it definitely changes their mindset to be like they're not just looking for a property manager to manage their asset. They're looking for someone who's actually going to care.
Mm.
And that's like when, the change starts happening from the landlord side as well when selecting the right agency. But I mean, with my experience, it's very, very similar to yours, very similar. Like I said, the amount of follow-up I had to do, and the only reason I didn't just be like, oh, stuff it, like I don't care, was because I wanted that house. Like the house for me ticked all the boxes. And I was like, I want that house. Like I'm going to do everything I can to get it. And that is the only reason. Had there been like, say we get like a lot of new developments, you could have 6 houses released in a street at the same time, or brand new builds, or a complex, for example. All of those properties are going to go on the market at the same time. What is different for the tenant is how they're treated through that process of actually looking for the house. Are they going to get callbacks? Is the application process easy? Do they get back to you quickly? If they're approved for 3 houses, it's going to come down to how they were treated by that agency. And again, for potential landlords, that's how you get tenants to stay in your houses longer because they're like, oh no, we've got a good property manager. Everything is easy here. Renting becomes easy with this agency. And this is why we're just going to stay put instead of trying to move and trying to hassle.
Mm.
So again, it's just like this cycle. Whereas if you change where the service levels are and prioritize, looking after your tenant, it's not about taking the tenant's side as
Mm.
some landlords will see it. It's just about having that people first approach and making sure that they're comfortable. And a lot of property managers forget that this is like someone's like personal life. Property managers see so much into people's lives behind closed doors, and there's not enough weight carried around the seriousness of that and the respect and the integrity needed to deal with that. Like we see into everything,
Mm.
and a lot of property managers just are like, oh, well, I don't care, it's not my problem.
Yeah.
Like, have some consideration, and it changes the entire relationship you have with that tenant.
Yeah.
But yeah, like back to my story, it honestly is so very much the same. My entry condition report was horrible. Within a few days of me moving in, we had like a whole like downstairs completely flooded because all of the laundry taps hadn't been plumbed the right way. And instead of I'm assuming the previous tenant would have had the exact same thing because a washing machine can only be connected and drained one way.
Yeah.
And instead of that actually being fixed or communicated to be like, hey, just set your washing machine up this way,
Mm.
no one told us, and it flooded all downstairs. And then the landlord's just like, oh, that's just how it is. And it's like, if that's just how it is, why isn't that communicated? Or,
Mm.
then when the owner was there having a look at it, he's looked at the cleaning of the house and he was like, this is disgusting. Like, I'm actually embarrassed that you had to move into something like this. And the photos given to him were made to look all pretty and shiny. But then how he's actually looked at it, he's like, door tracks can't get that dirty in 3 days.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, he was shocked to know that that's what we had to move into. And the feedback talking to the owner on site, again, like he knew that he knew I was a property manager, and he was like, I don't really think this is normal. And I'm like, I'm honestly actually not getting involved. I'm just your tenant right now, so I'm not even going to talk about this with you. It's just, I'm like, you should just go and talk to the agency about what you're actually expecting here, because there's obviously a misalignment between what you want as an owner, how the agent's handling it, and then how I've walked in as the tenant. And the misalignment can be seen so very clearly.
Mm.
So, and like I said, the backyard was then subleased. So I had the owner coming to the house like all the time. And had I known that the backyard was not included or had potential to be fenced off in the near future, there's no way that I would have selected that house, because I have two very outgoing, high energy boys. So
Mm.
the backyard was the reason why I selected that house and why I pushed so hard for me to have that house. So then to know that it's all been fenced off when I arrived and there's been no communication, it wasn't in the advertisement. And when I raised these concerns, they just said, oh, that's fine, just move out. There was like
Yeah.
no discussion of like, we're really sorry, or, there was a miscommunication. There was no accountability at all. The solution was, if you're not happy, move out.
Mm.
And I'm like, cool, that's 2.5 grand in removal costs. That's $1,000 in a bond clean. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very expensive exercise to move house, not to mention the stress involved with moving, and then we having to go through that process all over again. Like, it's not just simple that I can pack me and my two boys up and just move house because we're not happy. Like, there definitely should have been some more accountability during that process. And to know that I couldn't even get like a simple apology, or like, there was no, in the communication, there was not any attempt at even trying to make me feel heard or feel seen. It was just dismissal after dismissal after dismissal.
Mm.
So
Ah,
it definitely put a strain on the relationship going forward. I did last the house, like I did stick it out 6 months before I'm like, you know what, as a single mom with two kids, I can't just have the owner rocking up whenever he wants and then me being like, who's here? Like, what's going on?
yeah,
Like, I
anxiety.
needed, yeah, I needed that security to know that like my home was secure. I wouldn't have someone showing up all the time. So I did end up having to move. And I mean, like, the exit process, I didn't get an exit report. I didn't get any communication. I had to, like, when I eventually claimed my bond, they didn't, approve it. They didn't fast track it. They just let it go. So I had to wait the entire 2 weeks for my bond to be released. There
Mm.
was just like no communication. It was like I handed my keys back and then gone.
Wow.
So again, like, that whole exit process, again, the entire journey with that agency was just like, I feel sorry for tenants who don't have my knowledge. Because what if a tenant didn't know that they can claim their own bond? Like, what if they just sat there and they just kept calling the agency and never getting a call back? So
Mm.
again, like, someone without our knowledge or experience is going to be disadvantaged. And it's really frustrating to kind of be in this position, seeing it all happen and no one making genuine change about it.
Yeah. I think the biggest disappointment I felt was when I found out I was pregnant. I asked my property manager if we could paint one of the bedrooms because we didn't know if we were having a boy or girl, and the paint was like this musky pink color. And she didn't even acknowledge that I was pregnant. And I was like, you've just had someone tell you this massive significant moment in their life. And then that's when I realized that she just didn't give a shit. She just didn't give a shit. And so we're going back to like, these aren't hard things, right, Shelby? We're not talking about hard things. We're talking about basic human principles. Okay. So some of the things that you mentioned was care. And I've been saying this for like 4 years now since I started training. It's that every year I keep saying this. It's got to be more and more and more. We've got to elevate that care factor that we have for our clients, being our landlords and our tenants. Compassion, which is one of the things that obviously we've experienced that our property managers didn't have. And there's got to be a level of compassion and empathy without, going and I suppose crossing the boundaries of that professional relationship, but we can still be empathetic and compassionate for someone because of their circumstances. The other one that you mentioned was communication. So it's basic things again. Pick up the phone, have a conversation, communicate. What are the next steps? What needs to happen so that you don't have tenants in limbo, you don't have your landlords in limbo. You're actually just picking up the phone, having a 5-minute conversation or whatever, and it's done. You don't have to worry about it. They're feeling good because you actually took the time to have a conversation. I'm a massive believer still to this day on having phone calls. Do you embody that with your team? On like there's got to be some moments that we are picking up the phone and having some conversations, even if they are hard.
Percent. And my senior property manager is massive on that. She has like the feedback, like I was saying, we've recently started NPS scoring our tenants and landlords, and the feedback is amazing from our tenants, and it matches exactly what the landlord's coming back to us. Like their comments are nearly, you'd think they were from the same person. They're that similar, and it's all about like fast response, amazing communication. So it's like it's really nice to see when a tenant gives feedback and it matches the same feedback that the landlord's giving us, because it means I'm providing the same service to both parties.
Yes.
So 100% picking up the phone, like my senior property manager does that all the time, and it builds amazing connections with our tenants. They then feel safe with her because if something bad does happen in their life or an unforeseen circumstance does come up, they feel like they can pick up the phone, have that conversation with her. Then it allows us to be one step ahead of the entire situation, make the landlord aware. And again, the whole negative situation for that tenant can be uplifted and not as stressful, because then they don't have a cranky property manager being like not good enough, or I don't care what's going on in your life, this is how it is. If they just provide that communication between all the parties, and again, just care enough to communicate that and help them through it, it just takes all the tension out of it, and it allows the other person to hear your tonality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can pick up vibes on an email. Like we can tell if the email is written with like frustration or like, has a dismissive nature to it. And we can tell it then if an email is like super positive or, oh, they must be in a good mood today.
Mm.
Whereas like a phone call, you can hear it in their tone that they're not angry and they're not stressed, they're approachable, they're open to whatever we need to do to get, assistance between everyone working. You can hear that in people's voices when you have a phone call. And
Yeah.
then like you said, when you pick up the phone, it just makes you like just slow down and be like, there's no animosity here, there's no tension. It's just the situation is what it is.
Yeah.
So phone calls are super important.
Yeah. I had so many light bulbs go off in my head because while I'm talking to you and being present with what you're saying, I'm also like, my mind is just going like, oh my God, there's so many things that we can do. So whilst you were talking, by the way, so well spoken today, Shelby, I'm just like, you just blow my mind all the time. When you were talking about when I showcased that my story and said, imagine though, like showcasing to a landlord that do you want this and is this your expectations or do you want this? And so where my mind goes is that I wrote it down. It's a value comparison. And the reason why I wrote that down is because, and funnily enough, even though this won't be live until next week, someone tagged me in a post today about fees because they might be losing a property to an agent charging 4%. And so a few of us trainers have jumped on and we're talking about, well, there has to be a level of individual effort here with elevating and showcasing that value so that we're not losing to 4% agents. And so that landlords can actually see, okay, 4% versus 10%, what is the actual difference? And so I think you did a great way of explaining it earlier is basic things again. It's like your condition report and having an example of your condition report. Have they seen their condition report? If communication is something that's really important to them, okay, have they showcased their guarantee around communication or what online platforms that you have available so that tenants are responded to efficiently and effectively, as well as that transparency. So I think it's not just telling these landlords or tenants it's showcasing all of the amazing things that you do so that they can then decide, okay, if I'm going to be paying 10% and I know I'm going to get all this and I have seen it versus another agency coming in at 4%, maybe promising the same things but haven't actually demonstrated to showcase that, then that's a value comparison then. And then it's up to the landlord to decide, are they going to take the risk in going with a 4% agent who hasn't been able to show or articulate what they actually do versus someone like yourself being able to back up everything that you have said and being able to showcase that to them. So then my question to you, Shelby, is being a business owner and a leader yourself in our profession and being a tenant, has that changed the way that you approach now your day to day with the communication to your landlords and tenants and articulating that value?
It was almost instant. Like as soon as I went through the process and like I was approved and settled, I rang the girls and I was like, we have to change everything. Like everything has to be reviewed. Everything we have to let go with a fine tooth comb and change, make sure that everything is done to a high standard so that no one has to go through what I've just gone through. So it definitely like made me reevaluate everything on like the highest level of detail. And we definitely put like a heap of new steps in place to make sure that that experience was elevated. But even like back to the new business stuff that you were just talking about with showcasing value, it's like I actually do in my new business stuff now, I actually have like a link that has examples of our work that we send through so they can actually see what our entry reports look like. They can see how I handle an exit report, but not just the report, how I then communicate that to the landlord, how I communicate that to the tenant, so they can actually see real life examples. And obviously I just hide all the, address details and owners details and things like that. But at least then they can actually see firsthand how it's going to be handled. And even like as simple as like last week, we had a property that sold off my rent roll and it went to a new agency. Now that sales agent didn't include me in the loop, so I didn't even get a chance to pitch for the business. But on settlement, the new agent that was appointed didn't even contact us. It took them 5 days to reach out to us to say, hey, we're actually the new agents. The property settled last week. Can you send us all the documents? And I was looking at this like, and I did it on purpose. Like I will admit, I did not chase them. The solicitors had already emailed me telling me that I'd settled. So I did everything that I needed to do to close that file off. But I was like, I'm not going to chase this. Like, if this is what the new owner has appointed, at least it showcases again where the difference in value lies. Because if I was taking over a new business on a new purchase, you bet I'm like sitting there at 2 o'clock waiting for that settlement email to send that email to be like, hey, just settled. Where can I collect keys? I need the documents. I need to talk to the tenants. Like these are timely events that need to be handled very promptly, not 5 days after settlement. Like,
because anything could happen in 5 days, right, Shelby? Like, God forbid a storm happened, or they have a leaking tap in the laundry and it floods. Well, you're not like, what's happened there? Like tenants are in limbo. You're like, well, I know the property is settled,
but I'm legally not allowed to do anything because I legally don't have an appointment now to handle anything, related to you. So it's like, thanks, but I can't help you now legally. So like it's situations like this that we see firsthand that I'm like, it's mind-boggling how agencies like this are still actually operating effectively. And like looking into the future, it's like you need to evolve with the times and you have to start thinking very differently. Like we're not in dinosaur ages anymore where it's just like, oh, she'll be right. It's fine. Like we'll handle it later. It's not like that anymore. And with forever changing legislation, everyone needs to be on the ball and everyone needs to be utilizing software if it's available, making sure that the teams are looked after, making sure that that service delivery to everyone, like it's not just landlords, it's trades as well. Like if you don't look after your trades in the same way, if you don't pay them on time, if you don't prioritize how that communication is done to your trades, they're not going to want to work with you. Like it's so many different avenues of how you portray yourself and how you communicate that out as to then what comes back in and how that all flows.
Yeah. All right. So, what are some simple things that you can suggest that property managers could do immediately, or BDMs, in fact, because a lot of BDMs are, on responsible to onboard the tenants to improve the tenant experience?
Communication. Like it is that simple. It is communication. If you get an inquiry, like if you do not have the time in your day to call every single inquiry, if you send them some kind of personalized email, not an auto reply, if you send them some kind of direct email from your email address to be like, hey, this is what our process is, like we'll let you know when there's an open home. That in itself, the smallest thing is going to change how that tenant then views your agency, because I can guarantee you the other 10 agencies that they've inquired on that night did not do that. So
Yeah.
automatically your agency then goes to the number one list that they're like, oh, we know we're going to hear from that agency, so let's look at their houses first. In turn, that's going to then reduce your landlord's vacancies and make that tenant want to stay with you longer.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's like so the way I look at it is like every touch point that you have, usually with the tenant, is how can I elevate this so that we are actually improving the experience? We're not just talking about the fact that we are communicating with the tenant, it's the experience that they feel. And I think the best way I can articulate this for to BDMs, even though I wasn't managing the properties, one thing that I did do very well as a BDM is we had a leasing team, and the leasing team were part of my team. So they were looking over applications, they were keeping the renters updated, as well as though when the renters were approved, I was personally calling them, not just sending a button saying, hey, you've been approved. Here's your lease and here's how to pay the bond, which, mind you, this is what happened with my property that I'm in now. It's actually calling them saying, congratulations, you've been approved for your home, right? So it's like these touch points that you have, recreating that into an experience. And from that, Shelby, one of the other things that I did, which made the leasing team so happy, is I asked the renters for a Google review. But I asked them first, how have you found our experience? How was Jordan, for instance? I want to use an example. And they're like, oh my God, you guys have been amazing. You called me, you kept me updated through the whole time. I'm so happy. And so we found a lot of the reviews that we were getting were not just from our landlords, we were getting them from our renters. And so going back to what you were saying, Shelby, and having creating that brand advocates for the businesses, is the more and more we have renters talking about how amazing we are, then landlords are going on and having a look at those reviews, and they can see all of these happy people. It's a win-win then, right? And going back to that value comparison, then you can confidently say, well, have you gone and had a look at the reviews from the other agency? What are their renters saying about them? Because we know that there's a lot of angry renters that will go on and leave a review. But I think it's even more powerful when you've got all of these amazing reviews from your renters talking about their experience and how they handled the exit, like what you do, Shelby. And so I think it's very simple terms is go back and have a look at all your touch points and how you can actually elevate the experience. Casey, Lawrence, and we did a webinar a couple of months ago, and we went back to just even the onboarding. So how you can elevate the experience of actually onboarding that renter into your agency, not just the landlord, the renter, making sure they know how to freaking install your washing machine, or what days your bin goes out, like simple things that we know, but these poor new renters that are moving into their new home don't know, right? And so lots of tips on there as well, but I think it's just simple. It doesn't have to be hard or overcomplicated. We can just make it so simple and elevate what we're currently doing so that we are actually showcasing that we care and we give a shit about the people. that are moving into these.
100%. 100%. And if you and I are both rent vesting, how many of your tenants are rent vesting?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how much potential opportunity is there in your current database just with your current tenants right now?
Yeah.
Like, they are going to be comparing that to be like, I wonder if my property manager is handling my tenants that way. Or
Mm.
they'll rent through you. They'll move their property over to you because they're like, you guys are treating us amazing. We want our tenants to have the same experience, and they'll move the property over. Like, it's just massive opportunity that's not being spoken about enough at the moment, that is right there. And it's just everyday human people first stuff that seems to be forgotten because everyone's just so busy.
Yeah. I think like let's touch base if it's okay with you, Shelby, on the market right now. Because I think we're talking about opportunities. So when I became an accidental investor, right? A landlord. So when I purchased my first property 6 years ago, I actually purchased that home using one of the government schemes that were out at the time. Now, I'm sure, well, hopefully everyone listening to this understands that there are new government schemes at the moment which allows first home owners to purchase a property with 5% deposit. So I was one of those people 6 years ago. And I think what we will see is guess what's going to happen to some of these people that are purchasing homes right now in 5 years' time?
I actually entered real estate in the GFC.
Mm.
So I entered real estate and property management when we were doing rent decreases, when vacancy rates were literally like weeks and weeks and weeks, not just days, where we had to like chase renters like sales agent chase listings. Like, we had to hustle hard as property managers when I first started in real estate. And I'm not saying it's going to get to that level as to like what I'm kind of seeing in the market, but I'm definitely seeing that those agencies that are not proactive are the ones that the landlords' houses are going to sit vacant. It's going to become, it's like, it's hostile now. It's going to become a lot worse, I think, in 5 years' time, because there's a lot of people, a lot of investors, a lot of first home line buyers that are purchasing right now at the peak of the market. If this drops down, we're going to see mortgage foreclosures. Like, we're going to see tenants not being able to afford the rents because rents are still going to either maintain or increase.
Yes, yeah.
Affordability is not changing. And I think that's an issue in itself. A lot of agencies aren't assessing affordability right now to the current cost of living crisis that we're in. They're still going off what it was, 5, 6, 7 years ago at 30%. That's not realistic anymore.
Yeah.
So we're definitely going to come across a lot more harder times with where the market currently is right now and looking at where the next 5 years are going. But again, if agencies don't want to try and be proactive, looking ahead even 5 years to be like, what do I need to do to prep my team now to be able to handle angry people, like emotional people? If you can't try and help your team now to learn the strategies on what to do in 5 years, we are going to be like, we're going to be screwed.
Yeah. Well, a good thing that, that there is so much support and you're doing some amazing things up in Queensland, supporting other business owners and property managers and BDMs. We've got some amazing trainers all across the country to support. And I think, you're one of the people, Shelby, that you have invested in yourself and continue to invest in yourself. So I want to highlight that because we've all started somewhere, right? But to be able to get to that next step for you and that evolution, you have done so much investing in yourself. So I'm really proud of you for that. And so for anyone listening today too, I think some word of advice is things can get easier for you, right? We can develop things that Shelby was talking about, like your self-regulation and being able to ground yourself and taking a goddamn break and going having lunch just for your sanity and your peace of mind or setting some boundaries. But this episode was about we need to really increase our standards so that we are increasing the perception from the outsider because there is so much noise and I see it every day, right? And sometimes I wish I didn't have social media, but I see it every day. We're getting slammed. And I know that we're talking about this and it's not to shame our profession. It's to at least showcase the opportunities that exist for you all to be able to take some accountability here and ask yourself if you are caring for your clients, if you are being compassionate, if you are, communicating with them. Because again, Shelby and I came on because we are renters and we're in the industry and we're still seeing this happen. So there's a massive opportunity for you all. I want to ask a final thought, Shelby. What's one shift you'd love to see people take after they listen to this episode?
Review their tenant onboarding process. Like, review the entire process from when you list that property to when that tenant moves in. Because I think that's probably the most stressful time for a potential tenant. And for the people that are applying, I mean, you only have one house. Like, you're going to have multiple applications, but you're only going to approve one person for that house. How are you then going to handle the other 10 people that didn't get that house?
Mm.
Look at every single avenue between when you list that property and the communications that happen going out to when that tenant moves in, and see what improvements you can make. Just focus on that one bit. Like, you don't have to look at the entire tenant journey right off the bat. Look at, fine tune it, look at the one topic as to listing to moving in. How can you improve that topic?
Yeah, for sure. Shelby, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, and to also giving some really great practical tips on, what our professionals can be doing right now. It can be like daunting sometimes sharing our stories, and it's no offense to the ones that are managing the properties that we're living. It's like we got to do better, and we can do better. And I guess it's like people like you, Shelby, who know that we can do things differently, and you've been brave enough to do that. So again, a massive well done to you and your team, and just thank you again so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom with everyone.
Well, thank you so much. No, it was really good to get on and chat about it, because it's not something that is heard of a lot. So I'm glad we were able to, create a space for that.
Yeah, for sure. More spaces like this, I think that we need to create those safe spaces, and raw, real, and honest. I think that's the best way to be, right?
100%. You couldn't have said it better.
Yeah. Thanks again, Shelby. And for everyone listening today, thanks for joining into the Conversations for Growth. And as always, keep rising.